If you're a client, friend, or family member that's been trying to start a podcast, this is the episode you've been waiting for. We're going to talk about how you build your podcast. We're going to talk about the technology you use, what you can do to repurpose that podcast into a social media strategy, and we're talking about all the technical knit and grit. Okay, maybe we're not going to get too technical because I don't want to go over your head. I want you to accomplish something. I don't want you to be scared. So this is the podcast where we're going to inspire you to accomplish your goal and start that podcast. So let's get into it. If you haven't already, subscribe, like, comment, all those wonderful things. Let me know you like these podcasts. Every episode I do has got useful nuggets for content creators, business owners, etc. for you, because I want you to succeed. And there's a whole plethora of content out there, and this is at least a central hub for you to get a weekly dose of fresh content. You want to create a podcast. You're excited. You're like, I want a podcast. I want to be able to do this. And I want to be able to share something I'm passionate about, or maybe you just want to use it as part of a growth strategy, which brings me back to point one. Find something you're passionate about. If you're in fashion, start a fashion podcast. If you're in sports, start a sports podcast. If you're traveling the world, start a traveling the world podcast. It's not a bad idea to dual purpose your content. You just have to know there's a little bit of an investment in doing a podcast. So I want to encourage you to not give up and start finding content you're passionate about. One of the mistakes I made, I started doing content and I ran out of ideas, and I started, I didn't start asking people, I started asking ChatGPT, give me ideas, and I started using their ideas for a couple episodes, and then I stopped doing that, and I started getting people that watched the podcast, starting their opinions, and I got a lot of good feedback. Now, I still use ChatGPT as helping me with transcripts, helping me do research, helping me do things of that nature, and kind of speed up the process a little bit. But if you're not passionate about a topic, it's not going to convey authentically. And I want you to succeed. And I want you to be able to feel confident in what you're talking about. And if you just choose some random topic that some AI gave you, it's not going to feel like you. The best podcasts succeed where it's more than you. It's an interviewer. So it's you talking to someone else and you're going back and forth. That's the best type of podcast. This type of podcast is actually not the most ideal podcast because just me talking to you. And unless you're Alex Hormozi, you're going to have some time to build in audience. Consistency, consistency, consistency. You're not always going to make it. So don't beat yourself up if you miss a week. Don't beat yourself up if you post a day late. Don't beat yourself up on the experience of the podcast, but stay consistent. Push yourself, push yourself, push yourself, and you're going to find that a year or two later, you're going to have built a podcast audience, or at least built a solid foundation to grow your social media audience. What's more important is telling something that you are passionate about. It's that story component. And how do you tell that story? Well, you start a podcast. Like this, that's what I do. Started a podcast to help tell the story of the universe, at least from my perspective, without blatantly saying, well, the universe believes this. I am showing you what I believe and how I want you to succeed. And I leave nuggets about my clients and experiences and things of that nature to help build social proof, which is a topic for another day, but also to engage and let people know what I believe and what I stand for, and to empower you to succeed. So if you haven't already, hit the subscribe button. You know you want to. Now let's talk about the actual podcast content you've created. So you take your notes app out and you get a few content ideas and you have a few episodes ready to go. And now you're like, okay, how do I record this? Good news. If you have a decent iPhone, you can use your iPhone to do it today. You can also probably use an Android phone, although it has to be a higher end Android, as most Android phones have not that much great quality when it comes to capturing light and sensors and things of that nature, and doesn't have a lot of the whiz-bang features that last for an entire long form. So you're going to have to figure out if your phone works for you or not. Just turn it on for record for 30 minutes, see what the quality looks like, and see if that's something you're going to enjoy. But outside of using a phone, you can also upgrade and use a DSLR or an SLR for that matter. You can use an FX3. You could use any of the Sony's A-series. You could use anything of that nature. You could plug it into a webcam component on OBS, and you can then combine your audio with your video together. Because even though you are using an iPhone, you're only using an iPhone for visual. You can't skimp on audio. Like before we cover lighting, you can have a camera that you love, and you can set it up. Great lens. Don't ever use a stock lens. Sorry. So, I mean, iPhone, you're going to get stuck with a stock lens. But with cinematic mode, it kind of looks cool. Use a prime lens. Zeiss is okay, but just don't use the stock lens that comes with it. Use a G Master, use a prime, some cinema lens that has a good depth of field and has the ability to put you in focus with great low light conditions, because most people aren't going to know how to light a studio with all of this 3-point lighting I have everywhere. Although it's more than 3-point lighting, because I like the creative colors I add to the scene. Without confusing you, the most important component you're going to have is your mic. Right here, I have a Rode mic. It's $100. I have the Rode stand. Don't get a cheap stand. You're going to hate yourself for doing it. Amazon stands do not work very well. Please, 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 please. I don't mean anything about Amazon, but if you go buy a $30 podcast stand, it's not going to be weighted properly for the mic anyway. It's just not going to work perfectly. This one I can adjust on the fly, although I don't recommend when you're recording it because you'll hear stuff, but I can position it where I need it to and we're good to go. Having a great mic is going to help you capture the best content, okay? Without good audio, all you have is great looking security footage. Buy a podcast mic if you're doing a podcast. If you are using a lav, spend a couple $100 on that. I will tell you, this rig, this stand, this XLR, and then I spent about $200, $300 on an XLR interface, USB-C to my Mac. Now, I understand a lot of people aren't going to have a Mac and they're going to need to use USB-C to USB 3.0 on their Windows machine, unless their Windows machine has a USB-C port. Some do, and if you custom built it, like I did, my gaming machine is all the way over there somewhere, you can use USB-C. But in this case, you can't just, like these podcast mics take XLR and they connect to my external device. In fact, this mic doesn't actually care if it has phantom power or not. I guess for some reason it still uses phantom power. But if you're using the number one podcast mic, $750, SMB, whatever it is, then that needs phantom power. And this interface provides phantom power. In fact, this interface would allow me to plug in 2 of these mics together, and that enhances the experience, allows me to do interviews. Like I said, you can't skimp on it. So overall, for the audio, you're spending at minimum about $300 to $500. I know. It's a lot of money. Quick tip on your iPhone or whatever camera you're using. If you're using a phone, you're going to have multiple lenses and you're going to want to make the trick of looking at one of them that's not right. Do the finger pointing trick where you just point to see which lens is currently activated if you're using OBS, especially if you use OBS, because every iPhone patch I've seen when it does continuity camera is supposed to use 1 or 2 cameras, but I've seen it actually switch and do weird things with the sensors, and it's supposed to be the wide and the ultra wide, and that's it. But I've seen it flip back and forth. And so I'll say it this way, just do the finger point check beforehand. And then because you're recording audio separately to your video, you just do a clap sync. What is that? Very simple. Clap. And there's a frame specifically where your hands meet together where you're going to hear that clap sound. I use that to sync because the audio that's going to be recorded into OBS is going to be delayed a couple milliseconds, and it might be a frame or 2, and the audio from your phone, believe it or not, is always delayed, especially if you have cinematic mode turned on. And that is because the audio coming from a phone has to be processed separately from the video line, and sometimes it's before or after. At least it's consistent. So doing a clap sync even before you record social media to get perfect lip sync. A lot of people will unconsciously feel like your lip sync is off and won't connect with your content. It'll feel less genuine and less professional. Even though we're not kind of doing professional content anymore, we're doing more organic content these days. You'll find it much easier if you just do a clap sync when you're doing long form content. There are other things I could say technically to help you. I use OBS to bridge the gap between the two because it's free and it records high quality and I can control it, and it's real awesome. And I use a Mac for user-friendly experience. It's more consistent. It's easier to have less problems than I do with my gaming machine. And that just has to do with Windows updates, drivers, and etc. And for entry level, if you don't have a laptop, even if you have a laptop, you might want to invest into a Mac Mini. That's like $400, $500. Get the cheap one. Who cares? It's got everything you need, processes well. I recommend that you don't get 256 storage. You get the bump up. You can run Adobe Premiere. You can run any editing software and do record. Has USB-C, has embedded components onto the processor that will help enhance your experience, and you'll love it much better than trying to use a Windows machine. Not saying you can't use a Windows machine, but if you're a content creator and you don't have time to mess with configuring and all those kinds of things and finding the right machine, your machine from Walmart is not going to work. Your Chromebook is not going to work. It's not going to work. It's not going to cut it. A Mac Mini will do wonders for you. And I mean the Mac Mini that just came out, the M4 chip, not the M1, M2, M3. Plus, the Mac Mini M4 chip is a streamlined experience, and it fits like in your palm of your hand. When you're recording your podcast and you're developing the content, we're going to go back to content real quick. I want you to create content that's repurposable. In other words, I'm able to use this podcast content for social media, small little clippable bites or sub points of your main topic, structure it so you have your points and you have your main points. And then, under those 5 main points, like my website one where I said, you could do this, you could do this, you could do this. There were sub points and paragraphs that I had designed to be clipped out for social media. Now, because I have been working on an extremely emergency client project, haven't been able to post a lot from that podcast, but I engineer it so I have a lot of sub-points that I can use. They're between 30 seconds to 60 seconds. That helps me reuse the content. This way, I spend a day creating my podcast and scheduling for the whole week. Remember, you don't care if that social media post is connected to the podcast topic. You don't have to explain, I have this podcast. You don't have to do any of that. All you have to do is have something that has a hook at the top and concludes. That's all you need. And that can be 30 to 60 seconds. That can be something saying like, hey, if you're in human resources, you can increase employee morale just by getting rid of process debt, tech debt, etc. If you don't know what that is, check out my podcast. You could say something like that, although I recommend that you stay away from the word podcast in your clips because algorithms now downvote you. Yes, you're going to see the YouTube algorithm is going to love and hate your content at the same time. You're going to have content that works, content that doesn't work, and you're going to have to play around and see what helps. While you're learning that, you can use ChatGPT, take a transcript. I take a transcript out of Adobe Premiere. I plug into ChatGPT. I say, hey, I have a crafted prompt that I give it. It processes the prompt, it suggests me 12 to 20 clips, and I select the best 7. And I upload it to Instagram, Facebook, through Instagram together, TikToks, all scheduled, YouTube, LinkedIn, and sometimes on a Reddit community that I've been building and working with. I recommend that you repurpose the content so you get social media awareness out, especially if you don't have an audience. You need to build an audience, and building an audience takes time. Building a community might seem tough, but if you stick with the niche that you're developing, you stick with something you're passionate about, you're going to find the people. We don't have social media anymore. We have something called interest media, meaning if someone's going to like your content and has already liked content like it, social media is going to show it more and more to that person or that group of people. So you can literally find in the 6 billion people on the planet, plus there are people that are going to connect with your content. It's just going to take some time to find ways to interact with them, experiment with your clips and podcast content. Before you record, here's the steps you need to do. Set your shot, then light your shot. And I use simple 3-point lighting. I actually have a key light over here that I've kind of angled up above me to kind of bounce off of the ceiling and act more natural light. So I have less of shadows I don't really like. I don't like chin shadows. I don't like nose shadows. I don't like raccoon eyes. It helps bouncing the light around me. It feels more natural. Then I have background lights that I use. I have a blue one and red one at this current component, which is adding some layers to my skin, and it's kind of bouncing colors. I'm looking at my preview monitor over here, and I can see it looks kind of cool. It adds a little bit of flare, and it adds some depth to the wall behind me. I don't recommend that you shoot against a wall. If you shoot closer to a wall, you're going to see shadow. I don't recommend you get that close to a wall. What I recommend you do is if you do shoot against a wall that you have shelves and you have components, I don't have as much, or you add a breakup to it, which is going to add like, you know, a splash of design or something from light base, that kind of thing. I do have a softbox on my key light. Please don't just stick a light bulb in a stand and point it at you. Softboxes, they usually come with every key light you would buy. Key lights are cheap. This entire lighting kit I have is about $200. And then I also have an additional light that I found that was really, really cheap that I just use. It's not the right frequency. It's probably not even the right color temperature, but I balance it off to help fill in the sides a little bit. And then, of course, I have my backlight, which in this case, I did not turn on. Wow. Let me go turn it on. That's dreadful. And now I have a backlight. And so now you see the difference in the backlight. Now, my hairline being as high as it is right now, you see that a little bit there. With cinematic mode, I don't actually need this light as much because it will automatically add differentiation. But once I plug it in, as you can see, I stand out a little bit because the backlight works twofold. The way I have it angled, so it kind of works as a hair light. That's what they call it. So it outlines kind of like the back of your hair. Although because it's digital and where it is, sometimes, you know, I don't wear makeup. If I wore makeup, I would see less of this. You know, blend in more. I just don't have the heart to go to a store and buy makeup. I'm a man, not going to walk into a store and buy makeup. That being said, if I had a makeup artist, great, they can go buy it for me and find my skin tone and all that kind of stuff. Although believe it or not, I do know how to apply makeup. Because as a producer, if something isn't done right and you need to do it yourself, you better learn how to. But it also adds light to the background, which I'm so upset that I forgot to turn it on. I was like, it doesn't look quite right. And now I have depth. I have the breakup. I have the backlight. I'm dual purposing it. Like, it's just about setting it up. And if you have a dedicated space you can use, you can set it up and you're good to go. If you don't have a dedicated space, like if you didn't have this backlight, then you can shoot in front of a window on an overcast day and you can use cinematic mode to help you. Sounds weird. We use it when it's really, really bright to even fill in a little bit more, to add some warmness to the experience, to the shot that you see, as opposed to it being this cool. But, you know, cool kind of looks cool. Warm or cool means it's more orange toned or more blue, and it's, I'm not going to talk to you about kelvins. It's a whole color temperature thing. It's not going to take that much, literally. It's 1, 2, 3 lights. And then I have 2 backdrop lights that are also I'm using as side color fills. And that's kind of not like requirement, but if you had quasars or something, they're kind of like cheap quasars. I just needed something that was a bit longer and I didn't want to have to go stack multiple quasars together. So this is what I got, and I all got this from Amazon. If you want to know what I've purchased, just leave a line. Maybe I'll do an Amazon wish list or something that you can copy and paste and use all the equipment I use. Let's say you're traveling, film outside. Use a lav with noise canceling. You can use one of the new Rode lavs. They're a little bit more expensive. I'm not talking about the cheap ones. I'm talking about the kind that come with a little pod. You can use the little pod. You've seen it before where they have the little pod here and it has noise canceling feature. It actually has multiple mics. It's a mic array and it works together to process your audio. It's not going to sound like a podcast or a radio show. Podcasts come from radio shows. So if I have an interviewer, we can go back and forth and it feels good. It's just easy listening. That's what you want from a podcast. That's why you spend money on a podcast mic, because you want that certain kind of tone. You want the voice to sound more studio and less like a lav. Now, I am further away from my mic just because that's how the lighting works in here. It's not perfect, but it works for me. I've tested it. One thing I will say is make sure that you have the right spec cables. I've been using USB-C. If you watch the other podcast, listen to it, or some of the social media clips I have from that last podcast, there was a lot of noise. I was able to use AI and a bunch of filters and things to remove the noise. And it was there simply because I didn't have the right cable, Thunderbolt specific cable. And what was happening was it was an ungrounded cable, for lack of a better word, used for charging. and it fed back into the audio. You have to know that once you use a podcast mic, it's an analog device, and all analog devices are very prone to frequency interruptions and prone to just feedback and things of that nature. So electricity can feed back into it didn't feed back into the mic, thank God, but it would feed back internally into the interface, and it would be caught as just noise and kind of just wash the entire experience. Also, big audio tip I can tell anyone is always listen to your audio. Why? Because you'll know if you're too quiet. You'll know if you step away and sound like a mouse, or if you're too loud and it's popping. You will know that because you're listening to your voice. It sounds weird. You're going to have to get used to listening to your own voice. I get it, especially since your voice is going to sound different internally in your head versus what actually everyone else listens to. So just throwing on a pair of AirPods and getting used to the couple milliseconds delay is fine. Of course, if I really wanted to be pro, I'd have the giant headphones that you see all podcasters have. I'd plug into my interface and it would be real time, no delay. I don't mind that. I just don't like the idea of wearing giant, huge headphones on a podcast. As you get used to talking on camera, you're going to find that you're going to look away from the camera. You're going to find that you're going to stumble around words. You're going to add a lot of filler words like ums, but this, my favorite one, the one I hate the most to edit out of all of my podcasts is and. I do that a lot less because editing my own podcast requires me to listen to my podcast and know how bad I said things and how to improve things, both subconsciously and very consciously. I get very frustrated when I'm like, that point did not sound right, that point did not be conveyed properly, I could have said that better. My favorite one is when I mispronounce things. I do that all the time because I have multiple accents that just live in my vocal cords, I guess, and on occasion I'll pronounce something so weird that you'll be like, what did he say? And I'm like, no amount of me re-saying it is going to help you because I've tried. But it takes training and so forth, and if you don't have vocal training, don't worry. It's okay. If you make a mistake, no problem. Pause, collect yourself, don't get frustrated, and just re-say the sentence. If you stumble over a word, famous thing that happens when people do podcasts. I have 30 episodes recorded online, 30 plus. I help people with podcasts all the time. It's common for a podcast host or interviewer to be thinking of their words at the same time they're speaking, causing them to stumble over the words. This is very common. I hate it. It sounds like, when people word stumble and it's like, that doesn't work. It happens a lot. You have to remind host, it's okay. Take a breather, restate it. And if it takes time for you to collect your thoughts, just pause. Just collect your thoughts, think about what you're going to say, and say it. All that stuff can get edited and kicked out. There's no audience here. It's just a camera lens, and it's unfeeling, and it's cold, and it's whatever. But thankfully, with experience, you'll get better. And here's good news. If you start generating content, don't throw your content out. It's okay. It's okay to have bad content you just started off. MrBeast, when he first started, he was not the YouTube millionaire you know him to be. Or billionaire. But he kept growing and kept connecting, and eventually he found a video that went viral, and that's how you grow. The algorithm is your friend and your enemy. It's a friend of me. You're going to have posts that are low and etc. Next week, we're going to talk about editing podcasts and turning those podcasts into social media bites. We talked more about kind of the technology and kind of the concept, but next podcast, we're going to record part 2. I'm in the same shirt because I'm recording right now. Part 2, we're going to talk about editing that podcast. I pray right now that you embrace the podcast process, that you embrace the process of whatever God has put your hands to, that whatever you put your hands to will prosper, that you'll be given patience, you'll be given an inner peace, that technology won't frustrate you, that you'll be granted the ability to pursue that vision that God has placed deep in your heart, that thing that you're passionate about, the thing that gives you purpose, the thing that God has placed in your soul to accomplish. I pray right now that you get inspired to accomplish it, and that this helps you, gives you wisdom, understanding. The Lord gives you wisdom, understanding, and peace on everything you do. I pray this in Jesus' mighty name.